the median savings that Bumiputera individual has in EPF today is only 4,900. That means that's the middle half of the Bumiputera's EPF account holders have less than 4,920. So where are the properties for the M40, especially the lower M40? Where are the properties for the young families?
Actually,
they dropped down to 26. AMNO dropped down to 26 seats.
Once the biggest party in parliament now holds 26 seats in the parliament. Because that was the guy who used his position to take our money away from us and to go into his own bank account to, fund his wife's handbags when that could have been helping so many people. Like, I think what happened was totally not okay, and I don't think he deserves a pardon. Hello everyone, I'm Kusha.
I'm Rajiv.
And today, Rajiv is a little bit sick. How are you, Rajiv?
Yeah, I'm recovering, but just a good old flu.
And I am okay too, even though you did not ask, but that's okay. In today's episode of Policy and Chill, we're going to try something different. We're just going to be dissecting a few elements from the news segment. So Rajiv and I ran through Malaysia Kini, and we created a Google Doc to put all the different items that we found interesting while we ran through the news today. And we'll tell in the end which item was whose idea.
All right.
But yeah, let's begin with the first thing that's in our list today. We're going to be...
So what are we going to talk about first?
First, we're going to be talking about EPF. And after talking about EPF, we're going to be talking about the property overhang. 18.41 billion worth of units of residential units are overhung in Malaysia.
All right.
And then we're going to be talking about the unity government and what will happen if Najib walks free and gets the pardon from the king.
Okay.
So these are the three things we're going to be dissecting today, and we'll start with the first one by me asking Rajiv. So, what's all this buzz and noise about the EPF?
Well, since COVID and since the lockdown, EPF has been the government has had EPF withdrawals for members as part of the measures to help people, stay financially afloat. Now, there's been some financial assistance from the government, some cash injection from the government throughout the lockdown period, but I guess the government under Muhyiddin realized that they could not sustain cash handouts and resorted to then letting people withdraw their own EPF money for them to sustain their cost of living throughout the lockdown periods where a lot of people had their income severely disrupted. Now, for those of you who had your salaries running every month, even though you were working from home, I'm very happy for you. But there were a lot of people who could not do their business or who had severe drop in their business income, and because of that had to take a huge pay cut, despite having all the commitments that they've already had, all the financial commitments that they've had. So EPF has allowed for 4 withdrawals from 2020 to 2022. To allow members to withdraw.
They were called ICNAR, Lestari, and several other things. Yeah.
And now Perikatan Nasional is pushing the government to allow a 5th withdrawal, and I guess that's the crux of the matter.
Yeah.
It's a good political tool by Perikatan. I mean, I must call it for what it is. It's something that they are using to leverage against the PHBN unity government. It's something that they are using to stir up the sentiments of their supporters, who are some of them who are in financial difficulties.
Yeah.
And so we've got a whole different variety of situations out there. Some people truly have not recovered from the pandemic, truly have not been able to pick up from where their income used to be from before the pandemic, and no doubt for this group of people the money will go a long way to help them. And for some people it's nice to have. They would be able to survive without it, but to be able to withdraw it is nice to have. But to be able to paint a political issue out of it, I guess that serves a lot of Perikatan MPs, and which is why they are gunning at it.
And I must say, they have done it quite well, from the way they highlight the dire needs of the people, and as though there are not other government avenues to help get a loan for all the problems that people are facing. They're making it sound like EPF withdrawal is the one and only way the government can help the people, and that they should be doing that as opposed to all the other initiatives.
Yeah, so in this situation, you are faced with two problems. The problem of today, where you need your money, you may want your money, and the problem of tomorrow when you retire, and would you have enough money to retire? And so, EPF released some very interesting or
Staggering.
worrying data
Yeah.
when they resisted this. The median savings that Bumiputera individual has in EPF today is only 4,900. That means
In their account.
that's the middle half of the Bumiputera's EPF account holders have less than 4,900, less than 5,000 ringgit in their EPF accounts, and that's a bit worrying. Indians are also struggling. The median level of savings today, after the withdrawals have been allowed, is 14,900 only, and that's a staggeringly worrying figure, because at 55 years old, if you cash out 10,000 ringgit, 5,000 ringgit, you're not going to be able to retire on that.
Yeah.
You either have to keep working or you have to depend on your children, both of which may not be ideal plans. So there's a very valid problem of tomorrow, and we want to make sure that we go back to the original intention of EPF. Then why have EPF in the first place?
We institutionalized it.
Yeah.
We made sure it was cut from people's salary. It was important to us as a nation.
It's important for preparing our people for retirement, and not to say like we'll worry about it when the day comes, but to be able to prepare for it from today. And that's why EPF is there, and that's why it's a mandatory contribution from all employees, and it's not something quite optional, and allowing this withdrawal after withdrawal. Now during the period of lockdowns, I totally understand. There are many politicians who supported the withdrawal. I understood, and I also frankly supported the withdrawals during the lockdown period, because when the government is unable to assist you financially, at least let you survive by taking on the money. But now that lockdowns have been over for quite some time, and the economy has opened in full for quite some time, I think we need to focus on other ways to help people in need, and not depend on another round of withdrawals, and focus both on today's income as well as the income in retirement.
Okay.
Kusha, what happened? What changed with the current pressure?
So when Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim became the Prime Minister, I think it was like not even 2-3 weeks after he was sworn in, he was like, he's not going to allow EPF withdrawals again. And then 2 months later, the headlines made it again. Dato Sri Anwar Ibrahim is not going to allow EPF withdrawals. Our EPF numbers are scary, and our people will not be able to retire. And so he has been focusing on all the different ways. So if the person who needs help is a farmer, or if the person who needs help is a small business, he has been focusing on putting money in all these different spaces. So assistance and all these financial incentives for people to start and get started again and get back on their feet happens sectorally and according to what help they need and what exactly they instead of allowing people to take out the money. And so I think the fact that he has put in a loan system is a helpful method for people who actually will really require that little bit of money where they cannot get it from the government. So a lot of these government schemes that you have to get, you also have to apply for, and at least he understands that not everyone will be able to be getting these government schemes, and if you still need to depend on your EPF money to get certain things, you can request for a loan, and if you don't pay back, then your EPF will be your collateral. But he's aware that we're not catching everybody with all these different sectoral helps that he's providing as a solution instead of allowing people to withdraw their EPF. And so I don't think it's such a bad thing that he has created a loan system. I think it will help to filter between people who just want to take out their money to buy a new car, and it will help filter between the people who really need it to help pick their business up or help their livelihood.
Okay, so is Perikatan happy with this? Have they backed off? Or are they still pushing for a full, EPF withdrawal system like we've had in the past?
Yes, Perikatan is still pushing for a full EPF withdrawal system. So Perikatan is saying that the government does not understand the plight of the people on the ground, and they really need the money to survive. But Perikatan themselves are not telling us who are these people who need the money to survive. I don't think they have even the data of exactly who needs it.
And they say it can be a targeted withdrawal, not a blanket
don't-
withdrawal. So how is it possible to assess the genuine need? If you're going to implement a targeted withdrawal policy like Perikatan is pushing, is it possible to assess between a genuine need versus someone's temporal desire in withdrawing the money?
See, as a government, I think before I take that question, I think it's a bit philosophical how we want to be as a government. Before this, Malaysia has taken the stand that we're going to nationalize this retirement schemes so our people can retire comfortably when they grow old. Even if they don't have to depend on their children, they don't have to they don't have to depend on anyone. They are able to retire, and we've been forcing people to save money because we cut this money from the paychecks. It's not an independent contribution from the persons itself. And is this how we're going to continue being as a nation, or are we going to be the kind of nation who let people manage their own money? If they want to take out the money and buy a car, shouldn't it be my right because it is my money?
Okay.
So I think first, before deciding how to differentiate between the need of the people and the want of the people, I guess we should go into deciding do we want to be the kind of government that forces people and in my opinion helps people make sure that they have a social safety net to depend on when they are older, or are we going to be the kind of government like what Perikatan is pushing us to be, the kind of government that let people take out their own money and let them independently spend it?
Okay, so there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, the EPF withdrawal saga, and that a loan is available if you are in the category that you want to withdraw money from EPF desperately. A loan scheme has been put in place for you to do so, giving you the similar cash outlay without taking the money directly out of your EPF
But also
account.
helping you to ensure that because
And
the
now
loan is in place,
okay.
it helps you ensure that you put back the money that you borrow
Okay.
into the. For
Alright.
example, like you may not ever contribute back to your EPF. Yeah.
Okay. Alright, I was doing my best to segue into the second question there.
Yeah.
With that wrap up, not a new point over there.
Sorry. But yes, let's segue into your second question.
And so for our second topic of today, we have the overhang of residential units amounting to a staggering 18.4 billion ringgit. Now, Kusha, tell us about this. What's happening here?
So, our Deputy Finance Minister has given down some breakdown of where these units are and how is it overhung in different states. So, I'm just going to be reading the numbers like a nerd. So, Johor maintains its highest position, and with the number of units unsold as well as the value of unsold properties. So, they have 5,258 units worth 4.33 billion. That's a lot of numbers that I'm saying, but yeah, 5,000 plus units have yet to be sold, and they are worth 4.33 billion. Followed by Selangor at 3698 units, so 3.7 thousand units valued at 2.74 billion. And Penang, very close to Selangor, 3593 and worth 2.74 billion. Actually worth exactly the same with a very, very similar.
Very, very similar.
Yeah, Penang and Selangor are in the similar.
But Penang is so much smaller than Selangor.
Yeah, Penang is so much smaller than Selangor, but it has a very vibrant economy.
What about KL? Is KL as bad as Selangor and Penang?
No. So Johor number 1, Selangor number 2, Penang number 3. Yeah. So this is what the finance minister said, and the number of units that are overhung for the properties that are priced between 500,000 and 1 million is accounted for the highest number of unsold units at 9,323 units throughout the country. Almost 10,000 units that are priced between 500,000 ringgit to 1 million ringgit are overhung, and this is the highest amount of residential units that are overhung. So that's the numbers, the boring part of what's happening. But now that
it's definitely not boring. I find it very fascinating.
Yeah, but now that we're over the boring numbers, the Deputy Finance Minister thinks this is because there's a property mismatch. Developers are building units that are not for people's demand. And he thinks that Malacca is the best state where people are building for what people can buy, whereas all these other states people are building for something that people cannot afford to buy, and because of that this is happening.
Alright.
So Rajiv, what do you think? Do you think this could be true?
I think it's partially true, but I think that it's a bit simplistic for him to conclude as such.
Yeah.
One is a mismatch of what people want to buy. So like people may want to buy 300,000 ringgit apartments in PJ, but people are building 800,000 ringgit condominiums in PJ. So that's an example of a mismatch. And when that happens, yeah, people don't buy these expensive units. And I think it's quite telling that the biggest value of unsold units are these 500,000 and above.
Yeah.
These are properties for the upper M40 or basically the T20. So where are the properties for the M40, especially the lower M40? Where are the properties for the young families?
Actually, I
and
was
the
also
B40.
quite amused to find out that quite a number of affordable houses also was overhung. But then I digged a bit deeper and then found out that they are all literally in the middle of nowhere. It's not in the city, so no wonder it's overhung.
Yes.
But yeah, please go on.
Yeah,
Sorry to
so
interrupt.
the mismatch of what people want to buy is not just the price of the unit but location, because this is data that spans across a vast
whole
state.
country.
I mean, if you look at Johor, if you look at Selangor, huge states, and are these units coming up in where people want to buy, and are these units not coming up in the wrong places? And so when a developer embarks on building a project slightly outskirts, and he does it a bit more massive, then he has calculated the market's willingness to absorb the units. There will be overhang units over there. So just to put into some small perspective here, the number of units that you said that were in this overhung unsold properties, how many were there again in the whole country?
In the whole country, worth for 18.41 billion.
Yeah, 27,000 units. So that sounds like a lot, but I have here another interesting number. So the total volume of property sales that happened in 2022 was 389,000 units, and so this is
A small
a
amount.
fraction of that. Yeah. Okay. Now let's put into perspective other kinds of businesses. Now, in nearly every kind of business, you will have to build sometimes a bit more than what you can sell. Sometimes you would calculate wrongly and build a product that people don't buy or don't buy as much as you thought they would buy, and that's all part of the market economy and how people do things. And if we were to have a situation that developers have to secure maybe total sales before they can start building, I don't think that works for you and me either, and for everyone out there. And so now we look at it from the big perspective, the amount of sales that are happening and whether this
So
amount.
Sonesh will help us put all these numbers on the screen. So the first number you have to put is 20,746 slash over. How many is the number
The
of
volume?
the property sales?
Yeah, 389,000.
389,000. Please calculate for us a
Transactions.
percentage somewhere here.
So these are the transactions that happened. The amount of things that were bought and sold in the year 2022, notwithstanding that a particular unit could have been bought and sold twice in the same year.
Yeah.
But
No, but okay, I guess the number of property transacted and the number of property left untransacted is a good
it's a good
measure.
It's a good measure.
How vibrant our property market is. So this was actually a great answer to the follow-up question for you.
What is your follow-up question for me?
Should I care as a Malaysian who's living in the Klang Valley? I want to buy a property someday. So when I look at headlines like 18.41 billion worth of properties overhang in the Klang Valley, should I be worried as a property purchaser?
All right. I think the answer is, with all of our questions you asked me in live, yes and no. So let's deal with the yes, why you should be worried. And number one, I think MOF, this statement did not come from the Minister of Housing. It came from the Ministry of Finance. Why is this important? Because the risk of an overhang, and a growing overhang situation, is a risk to the banking
industry crashing.
Yes, a lot of bank loans, bank lending, finance facilities go out towards supporting construction and producing of these condominiums that get unsold. And if they get unsold, banks have to call in on loans, banks default on loans, and will that put banks into trouble? Hopefully there's enough check and balance in the banking sector to make sure that no bank goes belly under from any property overhang related matter. But that's a good reason why the government and for us to care that the overhang is under control. The second thing is how it might affect you, the buyer of your house. Now, if you're buying your house somewhere where there is a huge overhang, now in this overview of the data that we just gave you, that's just a snapshot of how things are overall in the country, but what's happening in your neighborhood. Now, if you're buying a property in whatever town in the country, it would pay to look around you to see whether the overhang is happening in your backyard, or is overhang happening far away from you.
So what I catch Rajiv doing a lot of the times is he's just on iProperty. He's just scrolling for fun. He's on iProperty for fun, looking at, oh wow, this is so fully rented out. So many people are living here. You can barely find a unit. I have heard him say things. So sometimes I walk into the room and he's just kind of on his phone. So I'm looking at him. I'm thinking he's scrolling Facebook, or which I'm very wrong. He doesn't scroll Facebook, he doesn't scroll Twitter, he doesn't scroll Instagram. For fun, he scrolls iProperty. And he scrolls iProperty and he's looking at the thing and he's like, oh, fully rented out. Very hard to find rent in this unit. That means you see, wow, if I invest here, then the rental is like can cover the mortgage, because it's like so hard to find unit to rent. Or it's like, wow, so many units listed here. Or if we're driving by after a site visit or anything, he'll be like, oh look, so many lights are off, not a lot of people are living in this building, it's so dead. Or he'll be like, he'll look at the building like, oh, so full, so many windows are open. And so yeah, this housing thing is kind of something he does, for fun, for as a geek, he loves it. And he likes observing, what's happening to our property market around here. So maybe we can start a separate podcast on, what should people buy and what's on sale. Because, I think it's very fun. You find it very fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright, so that's one of the things, not everything that I do. But yeah, so that's why you should care. Because if the overhang is happening near you, that's going to affect you. It's going to affect the resale price of the property. When it remains unsold for a long time, would it come to a point where the developer starts giving discounts and deep discounts? And if deep discounts come into play, then your value of your property will drop. If you bought it for 500,000 and developer starts selling the house for 400,000, that's going to affect your property value greatly in the market. So you want to be very concerned if you are buying a property that you don't buy in an area where there's an overhang, or you're very, very certain that in an area where there's an overhang, the price that you buy was attractive enough that you can withstand any potential drop in value.
And methods, you can use my interjection earlier about Rajiv, scroll your iProperty, scroll your property guru. When you're driving through the neighborhood, look at the building, how many lights are on, how easy is it to rent it out, things like that.
Yeah, so what do you think? Should we let the market be like this, or should the government intervene?
Okay, so an example for government intervention is what Selangor is doing. Selangor is doing a 30% affordable housing for every property development that comes up. And I think this is very helpful, because if a development is coming out in the middle of Petaling Jaya, then 30% of the affordable housing is with the development in Petaling Jaya. And it's not like, the developer contributes a fund and the government finds a cheap land to build the housing somewhere. So there's some sense to why the government is doing this in Selangor for us. But yeah, I feel these overhang units are not a huge issue. As we compared through the statistics earlier and the percentage that will display on the screen again now, when we fractionize both the numbers, it is a very small number, and I don't think it actually is making our market any less stronger. Our property market is still very strong, very vibrant. It is still great, and I don't think it should worry us, and I don't think it is alarming to the point that it requires government intervention. But what I think could be done better is, as the government, you oversee the local and the state plans of what's happening, and we can plan better where we need affordable housing. And if you're looking at an empty piece of land, should it be commercial, or should it be residential, or should it be affordable housing? I think the government can start putting up plans, so we can organize where people live and make sure we can have enough amenities and structures around it. So while we should not intervene in the market right now, how we basically the job of MPPJ, how we make sure that people are living properly, sustainably, we should definitely be a bit more mindful. So as for me, as a policymaker in Petaling Jaya, it's good to know that these overhang units exist, and it's good for me to know how much overhang units there are in Petaling Jaya, and it's good for me to drive around and see what is the demand, what does Petaling Jaya need as a city. Does it need more 500,000 ringgit condos? Or does it need affordable housing? Or does it actually not need anything? Does it need a park? So this information matters to me a little bit, but what I thought was we could dissect, does it matter to any other ordinary Malaysian who's looking at the property market too? Bye.
All right. Okay. So, what is also interesting in this regular release of data from the Ministry of Finance is that we keep releasing this overhang, this unsold units by developers. What I would find interesting is the number of vacant, unrented out units out there, and I hope that some government agency, maybe MOF, maybe the Ministry of Housing, would collect this data and release this data, because for all those who are looking at property purchase with the view to rent them out, you might want to take a look at this and be very wary before entering the market at some neighborhoods where while all the units are sold, no one's renting it out and the building is quite vacant, or the whole taman is quite vacant. So that's another worry. Now that's a worry that's real for you and me, because that'll affect your monthly repayments if you bought the property to rent it out but can't rent it out. So, all right, so that we've covered property overhang, let's segue now to a very different issue. Najib might walk free. Is this for real, Kusha? What's going on here?
So, the UMNO, our component part, our unity government member friend is asking for Najib to be given a pardon by the king.
Really?
Yes.
Now, what's going on there? Why is UMNO getting involved in this?
Oh, because of course Najib has enough influence in UMNO, and Najib, despite being in jail, is still very, very influential and holds a huge number of votes in the party. So yes, he has got the grassroots support. UMNO is essentially very Najib favorite. Najib is their favorite. So of course they would want Najib to be free. And in fact, they even compared it to Anwar. They said that Anwar was pardoned by the Prime Minister once, and why not Najib? Why shouldn't Najib be pardoned if Anwar got that? And so I'll try my best to be very unbiased in this conversation, but I don't feel okay with allowing Najib to walk away free at all. I think he stole a lot of our money. I think I am totally not okay. So as DAP Battalion Jaya Youth Chief, Kusha is against it.
Yeah. Okay.
And if I am asked by my political party leaders how do I feel about it, if they want to know how I feel about it as a grassroots leader, I will tell them I'm against it, and I'll tell them that should not happen, because that was a guy who used his position to take our money away from us and to go into his own bank account to fund his wife's handbags when that could have been helping so many people. Like, I think what happened was totally not okay, and I don't think he deserves a pardon. And so I am against it. Kushalini Mahendran, DAP Battalion Jaya Youth Chief, is against it. So Rajiv, why do you think this is suddenly coming up?
Well, I think it's testing the waters. I think enough people in leadership are testing the waters to see whether, number one, the public can accept this, but more importantly, number two, whether Harapan supporters can accept this. And people are throwing out the issue without quite putting the issue on the table to see whether, can we get away with this down the road? Can we be testing the waters here? And to that I say no. We won't get away with this. You've tested the waters. I think the people are quite clear that Najib has done wrong. Najib should stay in jail. And in fact, this can be a very dangerous thing to do. A lot of analysts have come up to warn that the government will be in trouble if Najib walks free. And the biggest reason is because the rejection of UMNO and BN in the last elections was so strong.
And
so strong.
Very clear.
Yes, they dropped down to 26. UMNO dropped down to 26 seats.
Once the biggest party in parliament now holds 26 seats in the parliament.
And the rising of the green wave against UMNO was also on the back of the fact that they were done with the dirty government that was led by previously Najib and then Zahid, and just generally that BN is dirty and BN is corrupt, and we want to end that corruption. And so having any amount of compromise to that cannot be acceptable. I understand that some people want it badly, and some of these people are part of the unity government. This is not a perfect unity government. This is a government that had to be put together because no one won the elections in an outright
with a fair
manner.
majority.
No one had a clear majority, and some form of government had to be formed for us to move forward for the next 5 years until we have the next general election. So while we get together as a government, and while we have to put aside our differences and pursue things that we can agree on in common. We cannot agree in common that Najib should walk free. It is very clear he's gone through the whole trial by court, not just trial by media, but trial by court, indicted, punished, put into jail. And if we are part of the process of letting him go despite his sins to the country, despite his unrepentant stance, that is simply unacceptable. So he should not be pardoned. We should not be part of the process of promoting the idea that Najib might walk free, Najib should walk free. And the price we'll pay for that is, I believe, the Green Wave will get even stronger in anger to the fact that Najib walks free, which is to the detriment of Pakatan.
But
So,
how do you feel as a Harapan leader when things like this come forward? You were
I mean,
fighting the 20 elections.
I totally understand Najib supporters in UMNO wanting to raise this. It's only natural that you want your boss to walk free. That's fine for them to raise it at their level. But for the cabinet, for the prime minister, for Harapan to consider working along with that notion, that's not acceptable. So I'm very glad that Anthony Lok has come out to say that this was never discussed in cabinet. I'm glad that some Harapan leaders have put their foot down, that this should not happen. But I think it's very, very important that all Harapan leaders make it clear that this is not supported. And we will not consider this. Let Najib apply to the king for his pardon, and let the king consider Najib's application. Harapan should stay out of it. Harapan should not be part of promoting or facilitating this process.
Thank you, Rajiv.
Alright, so I think we have to wrap up here. I think you have an event to go to. So thank you, all listeners out there. Leave us your comments as usual. Give us your feedback, and see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.